David, so this is what you were doing in my own house?
Amara, please, I can explain. This is not what it looks like.
Amara, I swear, I didn't know you owned onto all this.
Soon you betrayed the woman who funded your entire life.
No, please, don't ruin me. I'm begging you.
Emily Vale wasn't supposed to be home until Monday. Her husband had kissed her goodbye, promised to miss her, and insisted she enjoy her well-deserved break. But when a storm grounded her connecting flight, Emily returned early, suitcase in hand, expecting candles, apologies, maybe even love. Instead, she heard wedding music drifting from her own backyard. There beneath the white roses she had planted with her mother stood her husband in a tailored tuxedo, smiling at her best friend in a bridal gown. Guests clapped, cameras flashed, and the man Emily had secretly funded, protected, and raised from nothing was preparing to erase her in front of everyone. He didn't know the mansion wasn't his. He didn't know Emily's maiden name was tied to the most powerful private fortune in the country. And he definitely didn't know the $90 billion company backing his career belonged to her. So Emily said nothing. She simply stepped onto the balcony as the sky thundered, not from the storm, but from the helicopter descending above the estate. Behind the gates, a fleet of Rolls-Royces rolled in. Then her lawyer stepped out, holding the papers that would destroy him. For one perfect second, no one moved. The music kept playing, soft and ridiculous, beneath the pounding blades of the helicopter. The violinist at the front of the garden dragged her bow across one trembling note until it cracked. The guests turned toward the house. Some lifted their phones, some whispered. One woman dropped her champagne flute into the grass, where it tipped over and bled gold bubbles into the dirt. Emily stood on the balcony in a wrinkled cream blouse, black trousers, and travel-worn flats. Her hair had loosened from its clip during the drive from the airport, and one strand clung to her cheek. Her suitcase stood beside her like a witness. Below, under the rose arch, her husband, Adrian Cross, stared up at her. The bride beside him, Sienna Hart, Emily's best friend since college, went pale beneath her veil. "Emily," Adrian called, his voice too loud and too calm, "you're home." It was such a stupid thing to say that Emily almost laughed. Home. The word struck deeper than any insult could have. This was the house where Emily's mother had taught her to prune roses. The house where Emily had hidden during thunderstorms as a child, curled beneath blankets in the library. The house where her father had sat beside her after her mother died and told her that wealth was only useful if it protected what mattered. And here was Adrian, standing in her garden, trying to replace her like furniture he had grown tired of. Emily placed one hand on the balcony railing. She felt the old iron beneath her fingers, cold from the storm. "Please continue," she said. Her voice was not loud, but it carried. The minister blinked. Adrian's mouth opened. "This isn't what it looks like." That made the guests murmur louder. Emily tilted her head. "It looks like my husband is marrying my best friend in my backyard while I'm away on a trip he arranged." Sienna stepped forward. "Emily, I can explain." Emily looked at her, really looked. Sienna wore a silk gown with a fitted bodice and pearl buttons down the back. It was elegant, expensive, and familiar. Emily's eyes dropped to the lace at the sleeves, then to the small embroidered flowers along the hem. It had been her mother's wedding dress. For the first time that afternoon, Emily felt something hot move through the ice inside her. "You're wearing my mother's dress," she said. Sienna flinched. Adrian glanced quickly at the guests, then back up at Emily. He lowered his voice, but the garden was quiet enough for everyone to hear. "Emily, come downstairs, don't make a scene." That was when the helicopter landed on the far lawn. Wind swept through the garden, napkins flew, roses bent. The white canopy over the guest seating snapped and rippled. Sienna gripped Adrian's arm to keep her veil from tearing away. The helicopter door opened. Charles Whittaker stepped out first. At 72, Charles still moved like a man 20 years younger, upright and precise in a charcoal suit that seemed immune to weather. He had been the Vale family attorney for 4 decades, trusted by Emily's grandfather, her father, and now by Emily herself. Behind him came two associates carrying leather document cases, followed by a woman in a navy dress Emily recognized as Dana Cho, interim chief financial officer of Veylasta Global. The gates opened. One Rolls-Royce entered, then another, until the driveway curved with black polished cars. Security staff stepped out, executives followed, a notary, two private investigators, a man from the board whose face had once appeared on the cover of Forbes, and last, slowly, Emily's father emerged from the final car, silver-haired, cane in hand, eyes fixed on his daughter. The crowd seemed to shrink around Adrian. Emily descended the balcony stairs alone. No one spoke as she crossed the terrace and walked toward the rose arch. Each step felt unreal and perfectly clear. She heard the damp grass under her shoes. She smelled rain, roses, gasoline from the helicopter, and Sienna's perfume, jasmine, the same perfume Emily had given her for her birthday. Adrian tried to smile. It was the smile that had once fooled her, the one that said he had everything under control, the one that had charmed investors, journalists, waiters, her father's old friends, and Emily herself. "Darling," he said softly when she reached the front row, "let's talk privately." "Darling," Emily repeated. Several guests looked away. Charles Whittaker arrived at her side and handed her a folder. "Mrs. Vale." "Not Mrs. Cross. Mrs. Vale." The title landed like a bell. Adrian's smile twitched. Sienna's eyes darted between them. "Mrs. Vale." Emily opened the folder. She did not need to read it. She knew every page, every signature, every line of the plan she had put in motion months ago when suspicion had become evidence and love had become something she had to survive. But Adrian didn't know that. He had thought she was naive. Worse, he had thought she was grateful. Emily looked at him. "Before you continue with your wedding, I thought you should know a few things." Adrian laughed once. "Emily, enough." She turned slightly. "Charles." The old attorney stepped forward, voice crisp. "This property, known legally as Rosehaven Estate, is not owned by Mr. Adrian Cross. It has never been owned by him. It is held by the Vale Heritage Trust, of which Emily Maron Vale is the sole living beneficiary." Gasps moved through the crowd. Adrian's face changed. Only a little, only around the eyes. "That's absurd," he said. "The house is in our marital estate." "No," Charles replied, "it is not." Sienna whispered, "Adrian." He ignored her. Charles continued. "Furthermore, the wedding ceremony taking place here today was arranged using funds drawn from accounts under investigation for corporate misappropriation, identity fraud, and unauthorized access to private trust assets." The minister took one careful step backward. Adrian's jaw tightened. "That is a lie." Emily's father reached them then, leaning on his cane. He did not shout. He did not need to. "Adrian," he said, "you should have read the contracts before you signed them." For the first time, Adrian looked afraid. Emily remembered the first contract he had ever signed with Veylasta Global. He had sat at their small kitchen table in the city apartment they had rented during the early years of their marriage, pretending to be confident while his hand shook slightly over the pen. Back then, she had loved him for that trembling hand. He had been a struggling strategist with a brilliant pitch and no connections. Emily had been living quietly under her married name, refusing a public role in her family's company because she wanted a life not arranged by money. Adrian had told her he loved her simplicity, her kindness, the way she made coffee too strong and cried during old movies. He had called her his anchor. So when his startup failed, she had introduced him, carefully, indirectly, to a private fund. When his consultancy needed clients, she had made sure invitations appeared. When he panicked about being overlooked, she had placed his proposals in front of the right people without letting him know her hand had guided them. She had not done it because he asked. She had done it because she believed marriage meant building something together. But Adrian had never wanted to build. He had wanted to climb. And once he was high enough, he had looked down and decided Emily was beneath him. "Emily," he said now, lowering his voice again, "you're upset. You're embarrassing yourself." A hush fell. Emily closed the folder. "No, Adrian," she said, "I'm ending this." Sienna swallowed, her bouquet trembled. Ending what? Emily faced her best friend. The friendship, the marriage, the lies, all of it. Tears filled Sienna's eyes with impressive speed. Emily had seen those tears before, during college exams, bad dates, rent trouble, and every crisis Sienna had ever turned into theater. Once, Emily had believed them. She had held Sienna through heartbreaks. She had paid for her therapy after a difficult year. She had made Sienna godmother to the daughter she and Adrian had once hoped to have. But there had never been a daughter. Only miscarriages, quiet hospital rooms, and Adrian slowly coming home later. Sienna pressed a hand to her chest. "Emily, I never wanted to hurt you." "No," Emily said, "you wanted my life. Hurting me was just the price." The words did not come out angry. That made them worse. Adrian snapped, "Don't speak to her that way." Emily turned back to him. "You defend her beautifully. Did you defend me when she helped you forge my signature?" The guests erupted. Sienna stepped back. "I didn't." Dana Cho opened one of the document cases and removed a stack of printed exhibits. She handed them to Charles, who passed them to a nearby security officer. Charles said, "We have copies of emails, bank transfers, surveillance footage, and communications between Mr. Cross and Ms. Hart regarding the planned liquidation of assets they believed belonged to Mrs. Cross." "Alleged," Adrian barked. "You can't just walk in here and accuse me of." "Actually," Emily said, "I can walk in here, it's my house." That silenced him. The words settled over the lawn like snow. Emily looked around at the guests. Some were Adrian's colleagues, some were Sienna's social circle, some were people Emily had hosted, fed, comforted, and supported over the years. A few couldn't meet her eyes. A few looked horrified. One man from Adrian's firm quietly removed the boutonniere from his lapel and slipped it into his pocket. Emily saw everything. And she knew, suddenly, that grief could sharpen vision. "Everyone is free to leave," she said. "No one will be stopped, but this event is over." The minister cleared his throat. "I was not aware that the groom was already legally married." Adrian spun toward him. "Don't say another word." The minister held up both hands. "I'll be going." Chairs scraped, guests stood. The string quartet packed up so quickly one violin case snapped shut like a gunshot. Sienna's cousin began crying. Someone whispered, "Did he say 90 billion?" Another voice answered, "I thought she was a nobody." Emily heard that too. A nobody. For years, she had tried so hard to be ordinary that people had mistaken her humility for emptiness. Adrian took 2 steps toward her. Security moved at once, but Emily lifted a hand and they paused. His voice dropped to a hiss. "Do you have any idea what you're doing?" "Yes," she said. "You'll ruin both of us." "There is no both of us." His eyes flashed. For a heartbeat, she saw the man behind the charm, not the ambitious husband, not the polished executive, not the wounded boy he had pretended to be. She saw calculation, rage, disbelief that anything he considered his could refuse him. "You think money makes you powerful," he said. Emily leaned closer. "No, I think truth does." Then she handed him the folder. Inside were 3 things: a petition for divorce, a court order freezing certain accounts, and a notice of termination from all advisory contracts connected to Velaster Global pending investigation. Adrian opened it. His face emptied. Sienna gripped his sleeve. "What is it?" He didn't answer. Emily's father watched quietly. His expression was not triumphant. It was sad. He had warned Emily about Adrian, though never cruelly. He had simply asked early on whether Adrian loved her peace or only the doors that opened around her. Emily had been angry at him for asking. Now she understood that love sometimes made the wrong people look hungry instead of dangerous. Adrian looked up. "You can't terminate me. The board approved my position." Dana Cho stepped forward. "The board approved your position based on financial disclosures that appear to contain false statements. As of 8 o'clock this morning, your access was suspended." "This morning," Adrian repeated. Emily's gaze did not waver before my flight landed. He stared at her. "You knew." "I hoped I was wrong," she said. That was the part that hurt most, not the betrayal itself, but the stubborn, humiliating hope she had carried even after the evidence began piling up. Hope when the investigators sent photographs of Adrian and Sienna entering hotels. Hope when Emily found the hidden phone in his gym bag. Hope when Sienna called her sister while asking careful questions about the estate. Hope when Adrian insisted she take a spa trip to Geneva the same weekend he scheduled, a private donor celebration at Rosehaven. Emily had taken the trip. She had boarded the plane. She had even bought Adrian a book at the airport because he had once said he wanted to read more history. Then the storm came, and fate, tired of subtlety, sent her home. Adrian closed the folder slowly. "You set me up." "No," Emily said. "You walked into the life you designed." Sienna suddenly moved toward Emily, hands outstretched. "Please, you have to believe me. He told me you were divorcing him. He said you didn't love him anymore. He said the marriage had been dead for years." Emily looked at the gown again, her mother's gowns. "How did you get the dress?" Sienna's face crumpled. "I borrowed it from the locked cedar room." Adrian said sharply, "Sienna." Emily waited. Sienna's tears stopped. "That was the answer." "You knew exactly what you were doing," Emily said. Sienna lifted her chin, and for 1 second the mask slipped from her too. "You had everything." "No," Emily said quietly. "I had people who wanted everything." Sienna's face reddened. "Do you know what it was like being beside you, watching you pretend you were simple while money followed you like sunlight? You never even had to ask. Doors opened, people listened, men loved you." Emily almost smiled at that last one. "Men loved me?" she asked. Sienna looked at Adrian, then away. Emily nodded. "Take off the dress." Sienna froze. "What?" "My mother's dress. Take it off before you leave my property." "That's insane," Adrian snapped. Emily did not look at him. "Charles." Charles signaled to one of the female security officers, who stepped forward with a garment bag and a grey coat. Sienna stared, as though the world had turned inside out. "You can change in the pool house," Emily said. "You will leave the dress behind." Sienna's mouth trembled again, but no tears came this time. She gathered the skirt and walked toward the pool house with the security officer beside her. Adrian watched her go, then turned back to Emily. "This is cruelty." Emily's laugh was soft. "No, cruelty was inviting guests to celebrate my humiliation. This is inventory recovery." Her father's mouth twitched, almost a smile. Adrian's phone began buzzing, then buzzing again, then again. Across the lawn, other phones lit up too. Dana glanced at her own screen. "The statement is live." Adrian's eyes narrowed. "What statement?" Emily took out her phone. For the first time since stepping onto the balcony, her hand shook slightly. She steadied it before anyone could notice and opened the press release. Veylasta Global announces leadership transition and internal review. The statement was clean, legal, restrained. It did not mention the wedding. It did not mention Sienna. It did not mention betrayal. It simply announced that Emily Marin Vale would assume the role of chair and chief executive officer, effective immediately following the retirement of her father, Thomas Vale. It also announced the suspension of external consultant Adrian Cross pending an inquiry into financial irregularities. Adrian read over her shoulder. His tan faded to grey. "You can't do this," he whispered. Emily locked her phone. "I already did." You were never involved in the company. I own 51%. You said you hated corporate life. I do. Then why? Emily looked across the garden. The white roses were battered from the helicopter wind, but still standing. Because I trusted the wrong person with my absence, she said. I won't make that mistake again. The last guests hurried toward the driveway. Some avoided Adrian, some stared openly. A few tried to approach Emily, perhaps to apologize, perhaps to explain why they had come, but her security team kept them moving. Soon only a handful remained. Emily, Adrian, Charles, Dana, Thomas Vale, the security detail, and the ruined wedding decorations. Adrian's voice softened. M. She hated that nickname now. He took another step. Listen to me, I made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but this is too far. We can talk, we can fix this. Fix what? Us. There is no us. His eyes shone. Whether from fear or feeling, Emily no longer cared. I loved you, he said. Emily felt the words hit the old place inside her where belief used to live. For years, she had wanted to hear him say that with even a fraction of sincerity. Now it sounded like a password he had forgotten until the door locked. No, she said, you loved what you thought I could be used for. When you thought I was only a quiet wife, you neglected me. When you sensed there was money near me, you studied me. When you thought my money was yours, you tried to replace me. That is not love, that is appetite. Adrian's expression hardened. You'll regret humiliating me. Charles stepped forward. Mr. Cross, I strongly advise you to stop speaking. Adrian ignored him. Do you think the press will spare you? Secret heiress destroys husband at wedding. They'll eat you alive too. Emily looked at the garden, the cameras, the scattered flowers, the abandoned champagne tower. Maybe, she said, but they'll spell my name correctly. Her father coughed into his hand. Adrian turned on him. You think this is funny? Thomas Vale's face cooled. No, I think it is overdue. For a moment, Emily saw the young man Adrian had once been, the one who hated being dismissed by powerful people, who hid insecurity beneath ambition. She had mistaken his resentment for drive. She had fed it with opportunity, thinking success would soothe him. But some hunger only grows when fed. Sienna emerged from the pool house in the grey coat, face bare, hair messy, no veil, no pearls, no bridal glow. The security officer carried the wedding dress inside the garment bag. Without the gown, Sienna looked smaller. She looked at Adrian, as if expecting him to protect her. He didn't. That, more than anything, seemed to frighten her. Emily took the garment bag from the officer. She held it carefully, as though her mother might feel the insult from wherever she was. Sienna whispered, Emily, please. Emily looked at her. When my mother was dying, you sat beside me in the hospital chapel. Do you remember? Sienna closed her eyes. You held my hand and told me I would never be alone, Emily continued. Then years later, you broke into the room where I kept the last things that smelled like her perfume, and you put on her dress to marry my husband. I'm sorry, Sienna said. Emily wanted those words to matter. They didn't. You're banned from this property, Emily said. From all Velaster offices, from all residences held by the trust. If you contact me except through counsel, I'll treat it as harassment. Sienna looked as though she might collapse, but the security officer gently guided her toward the driveway. Adrian finally moved. Sienna. She turned back to him. Did you know? He hesitated. It was tiny, barely visible. But Sienna saw it. Did you know who she was? She asked. Adrian said nothing. Sienna gave a short, broken laugh. You did. I suspected, he said. Emily stared at him. That surprised her. Not because he had suspected. Looking back, she could see the moments. His questions about her father, his curiosity about old family friends, the way he had searched her desk when he thought she was asleep. What surprised her was that he admitted it. Sienna's face twisted. You told me she was useless to you. Adrian snapped, not now. Sienna stepped back as if slapped. Emily watched the two of them see each other clearly at last. It was almost poetic, if poetry could smell like wet roses and ruined cake. Sienna left without another word. Adrian remained. The helicopter engine slowed. The estate grew quiet except for distant thunder. Charles checked his watch. Mrs. Vale, the court officer is ready when you are. Adrian turned sharply. Court officer. From one of the Rolls-Royces, a woman in a dark suit approached with a sealed envelope. Mr. Adrian Cross, she said, you have been served. He did not take it. She placed it on the nearest chair. Emily walked past him toward the house. Emily, he called. She stopped but did not turn. You loved me once. Her eyes closed. That was cruel because it was true. Yes, she said, and I paid dearly for it. Then she went inside. The house received her in silence. For years, Rosehaven had been a place Emily visited only occasionally. Adrian preferred the city penthouse, the yacht club, the rented villas, where he could pose as a man of inherited ease. He said Rosehaven was too sentimental, which she now understood meant it belonged too fully to her. Inside, the entrance hall smelled of beeswax and lilies. Wedding staff had placed floral arrangements along the staircase. White ribbons curled around the banister. A framed photograph of Emily's mother had been moved from the console table and replaced with a seating chart. Emily stopped in front of it. Table 1, Adrian Cross, Sienna Hart, Malcolm Greer, Veronica Cross. Veronica Cross. Adrian's mother. Emily touched the paper. His mother came, she said. Behind her, Thomas Vale sighed. Yes. Emily turned. You knew. I knew there was an event, he said. I did not know it was this. Charles entered behind him. We confirmed the ceremony details last night, but your flight was already delayed. Your father wanted to intervene immediately. I told him not to, Emily said. Thomas looked at her with weary affection. You told me to trust you. And did you? No, he said, but I obeyed. Despite everything, Emily smiled faintly. Then the smile faded. She looked at the seating chart again and found more names. Board members' spouses, Adrian's investors, Sienna's influencer friends, 2 journalists disguised as lifestyle bloggers, and 3 people Emily had considered close family acquaintances. They all came, she whispered. Thomas moved beside her. Some were lied to. Some wanted to believe the lie. Yes, that honesty steadied her more than comfort would have. Emily took the seating chart off the easel and folded it once, twice, until the thick paper bent awkwardly. She handed it to Charles. Add it to the file. He nodded. The wedding planner approached from the dining room, mascara smudged, headset crooked. Mrs. Cross, I mean Mrs. Vale, I am so sorry. We were told this was a private recommitment celebration and that the legal details were handled. We had no idea. Emily held up a hand. You and your staff will be paid for work completed. Please pack everything that does not belong to the estate and leave by 6. The woman looked close to tears with relief. Of course. And the cake? In the kitchen. Emily considered. Send it to the children's shelter on Marlow Street. Remove the bride and groom decoration first. Yes, ma'am. When the planner hurried away, Thomas raised an eyebrow, still practical in disaster. Emily looked down the hall, toward the room where her mother's portrait should have been. Practicality is what keeps people from burning houses down. Thomas studied her. Is that what you want to do? No, Emily said. I want to clean it. The next hours became a strange procession of removal. Florists carried out arches. Caterers packed silver trays. Staff stripped rented linens from tables. Security collected guest lists invoices and digital devices that belonged to the event company but contained images of the ceremony. Emily moved through the house as if through a museum after a theft, identifying what was hers, what was rented, what had been stolen from locked rooms, what had been touched. Her mother's pearl hair comb was found in Sienna's bridal clutch. Her grandmother's silver cake knife lay beside the wedding cake. A pair of cufflinks Emily had given Adrian on their first anniversary were on his dressing table in the East guest suite, along with a handwritten speech. Charles brought it to her just before dusk. "You may not want to read this." Emily took it anyway. Adrian's handwriting was bold and slanted, the kind of script that looked confident even when lying. "My love, Sienna, from the moment I truly saw you, I understood what partnership was meant to be. Not duty, not obligation, not living in the shadow of someone who cannot match your fire." Emily stopped reading. She folded the paper carefully. "Make a copy," she said, "then burn the original." Charles did not argue. By 6, the house was almost itself again, almost. The roses remained trampled. The lawn bore the circular scar where the helicopter had landed. The pool house smelled faintly of Sienna's perfume. In the upstairs hall, Emily found a lipstick mark on the mirror and stood staring at it until her reflection blurred. Her father found her there. "You need to eat," he said. "I'm not hungry." "You never are when you're heartbroken." Emily wiped the lipstick from the mirror with a towel. "I'm not heartbroken." Thomas said nothing. She looked at him in the reflection. "I'm not." "Very well." The gentleness in his voice undid her. Emily gripped the edge of the sink. For a terrible moment, she thought she might cry, not elegantly, not with dignity. She thought she might fold to the floor like fabric. But no tears came. "I think I used them all already," she said. Her father stepped closer. "When?" The answer came from somewhere old. "The first year he stopped touching my hand in public. The second year he started correcting my stories. The night he forgot the hospital appointment. The morning Sienna knew about a necklace I had never shown her." Thomas closed his eyes. "I didn't want to be one of those women," Emily said. "The kind everyone pities because she can't see what's obvious." "You were not blind," he said. "You were loyal." "Is there a difference?" "Yes," Thomas said. "Blindness is not seeing. Loyalty is seeing and hoping there is more." That was the closest he came to forgiving her for ignoring his warnings. Emily turned from the mirror. "I need to go to the office tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" "Yes." "Emily, you just became CEO of a company I've avoided for 10 years, she finished. "I'm aware. You do not need to prove your strength by refusing rest." "I'm not proving strength." She handed him the stained towel. "I'm preventing Adrian from turning pity into leverage." Thomas looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Your mother would have done the same." Emily's throat tightened. Would she have hated me for letting him get this close? "No," Thomas said. "She would have hated him for making you ask that." Night fell over Rosehaven. From the master bedroom, Emily watched the final Rolls-Royce leave. Her father stayed in the West Wing. Charles remained in the library with Dana and the legal team, reviewing documents beneath green bankers' lamps. Security patrolled the grounds. Adrian had left too, though not willingly. His accounts were frozen, his company phone disabled, his access cards cancelled. His driver resigned within an hour of the press release. Emily stood in the room she had once shared with him and surveyed the evidence of his absence. His watch case was gone. His passport was gone. The leather overnight bag she had bought him in Milan was gone. But half his suit still hung in the closet, confident he would return. Emily walked to the closet and touched the sleeve of a navy jacket. She remembered Adrian wearing it to his first major gala, nervous and radiant, whispering, "Do I look like I belong?" She had answered, "You belong with me." How young she had been, not in years but in trust. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She let it ring. A voicemail appeared. Then another called. Then a text. Emily, pick up. This is insane. Another. You're making a mistake. We need to control the narrative. Another. Sienna lied too. Don't let her play victim. Emily blocked the number. A minute later, a message came from Adrian's mother. I don't know what you think you saw, but marriage is complicated. A good wife doesn't destroy her husband publicly. Emily stared at it. Then she typed, a good husband doesn't host a wedding while married. She did not send it. Instead, she blocked Veronica too. At midnight, Emily carried Adrian's remaining clothes downstairs herself. The security guard offered to help, but she refused. Suit by suit, shirt by shirt, she laid them in the foyer. Not thrown, not torn, not burned, folded, bagged, labeled. At 1 in the morning, she found a small velvet box in the back of his drawer. Inside was a diamond bracelet. Not hers. The card beneath it read, for as soon everyone will know. Emily closed the box. Her hand did not shake this time. At 8 the next morning, Emily Vale walked into Veylasta Global headquarters for the first time as CEO. The building rose 57 stories over Manhattan, all glass and steel, reflecting a sky rinsed clean by rain. Reporters crowded behind barricades. Cameras swung toward her as the black car stopped. Dana stepped out first, Charles followed, then Emily. She wore a navy suit, her mother's pearl earrings, and no wedding ring. The questions struck like hail. Mrs. Vale, is it true your husband attempted to marry another woman? Were company funds involved? Did you hide your identity for years? Is Adrian Cross under criminal investigation? Are you divorcing him? Emily paused at the entrance. Dana murmured, you don't have to answer. Emily looked at the cameras. For most of her adult life, she had avoided them. As a child, she had watched cameras turn people into stories and stories into weapons. Her father had taught her that privacy was a fortress. Her mother had taught her that silence was not always dignity. Emily stepped toward the microphones. My personal life is painful, she said, but it is not the focus of today. Veylasta Global employs more than 100,000 people across 22 countries. My responsibility is to them, to our partners, and to the communities that depend on our work. We have begun an internal review, and where wrongdoing is found, we will act lawfully and decisively. A reporter shouted, and your husband? Emily looked directly into the nearest camera. Mr. Cross can answer for himself. Then she entered the building. Inside, the lobby was silent. Hundreds of employees had gathered along the balconies and behind security barriers. Some watched with curiosity, some with sympathy, some with skepticism. Emily knew what many of them saw, the hidden heiress finally claiming the throne after a scandal. She did not blame them. She had given them no other image. At the elevator bank, an older janitor stepped forward hesitantly. His name tag read Lewis. Ms. Vale. Security shifted, but Emily stopped them. Lewis held out a small white rose. Your mother used to say good morning to everyone, even when she was in a hurry. His eyes shone. You look like her. Emily took the rose carefully. Thank you, Lewis. The lobby changed then, not dramatically, but enough. People saw her receive the flower. They saw her remember his name after he told it to her. They saw something human in the headline. By noon, Emily was in the boardroom. The directors sat around a long table of dark wood. Some had known her since childhood. Some had underestimated her intentionally. Some had supported Adrian because he was charming, profitable, and male in the familiar way powerful rooms trusted. Emily stood at the head of the table. Behind her, the city glimmered. I'll be brief, she said. For years, I remained outside daily operations. That was my choice, and in hindsight, not always a wise one. I trusted systems because my family built them. I trusted people because I wanted to believe good work attracted good motives. Yesterday proved otherwise. No one interrupted. Adrian Cross was given influence here because I allowed it. Whether knowingly or unknowingly, this board allowed that influence to expand without sufficient scrutiny. That ends today. Malcolm Greer, a director with silver eyebrows and a taste for condescension, cleared his throat. Emily, no one disputes the seriousness of these allegations, but perhaps we should avoid reactionary decisions driven by personal distress. Emily looked at him. Malcolm, she said, did you attend the wedding? His face flushed. I was invited to what I understood was a private celebration. That is not what I asked. The room tightened. Yes, he said. Did you ask why my husband was exchanging vows with another woman? I was told there had been a separation. By whom? He hesitated. Emily waited. Adrian, he said. Emily nodded. Thank you, you may remain for the first vote. After that, I expect your resignation. Malcolm sat back. Excuse me. Charles slid a folder across the table. Your correspondence with Mr. Cross suggests you were aware he intended to use his perceived connection to veil family assets as collateral in negotiations not approved by this board. Malcolm opened the folder. His flush drained. Emily turned to the rest of the directors. Anyone else who received a promise from Adrian Cross regarding access, influence, shares, appointments, or personal favors should disclose it now. If I discover it later, I will treat the silence as participation. For nearly 10 seconds, no one moved. Then one director raised a hand. Then another. By the end of the hour, 3 resignations were pending, 2 outside contracts were suspended, and Emily had ordered an independent audit of every project Adrian had touched. Dana caught up with her outside the boardroom. That was ruthless, she said. Emily glanced at her. Dana smiled slightly, necessary but ruthless. Emily exhaled. I don't want to become cruel. Cruel people rarely worry about that. They walked toward the executive suite. Staff parted respectfully, some pretending not to stare. Emily's new office had been her father's. The nameplate had already been changed. EMILY M. Vales, Chair and CEO. She stood outside it longer than expected. Dana noticed, we can delay the afternoon meetings. No, Emily touched the nameplate. My mother's middle name was Marin. She hated this office. Why? She said it had too many windows and not enough books. Dana looked around at the glass walls. She had a point. Emily smiled. Then her assistant approached, nervous. Ms. Vale, there's someone downstairs asking for you. He says it's urgent. Emily already knew. Adrian. Yes. Tell security he is not permitted above the lobby. The assistant nodded. Emily entered her office. 10 minutes later, her phone rang from reception. Dana looked at the screen. You don't have to take it. Emily watched the blinking light. Then she pressed the speaker button. This is Emily Vale. Adrian's voice filled the office, tight with panic. You froze my accounts. The court did. My cards don't work. That is generally what frozen means. Dana looked down to hide a smile. Adrian inhaled sharply. I need access to my personal funds. Your attorney can contact mine. You know I can't pay an attorney if everything is frozen. Emily said nothing. His voice softened. Emily, please, I'm at the lobby like some criminal. People are filming me. Then leave. I have nowhere to go. That stopped her. Not because she believed him. Adrian had friends, allies, Sienna, his mother, investors he had flattered, women he had charmed, men he had bribed with proximity. He had places to go. But once, years ago, he had said the same words after his startup collapsed. "I have nowhere to go." And Emily had answered, "Come home." She closed her eyes. "Adrian," she said, "Rosehaven was never yours. The penthouse lease is held by the company and has been reassigned. The accounts under review are inaccessible. Any legitimate personal property will be returned through counsel. That is all. You can't cut me off like I'm nothing. I didn't make you nothing. I stopped paying for the costume." Silence. Then he said, "You're enjoying this." Emily looked out over the city. "No, that's how I know I'm still myself." She ended the call. For the next 3 weeks, Adrian Cross became a public collapse. At first, he tried confidence. He released a statement through an expensive publicist claiming he and Emily had been privately separated for years, that the ceremony had been symbolic, and that Emily's actions were the result of emotional distress and corporate opportunism. The statement lasted 6 hours before photographs surfaced of him wearing his wedding ring at a charity dinner beside Emily 2 weeks earlier, calling her "my beautiful wife" in a toast. Then he tried victimhood. He appeared outside a courthouse with tired eyes and no tie, saying he had been ambushed by dynastic power. That lasted 2 days before financial journalists uncovered his luxury purchases billed through shell entities connected to consulting accounts. Then he tried romance. He sent flowers to Rosehaven every morning: white roses, red roses, orchids, lilies. Emily donated them to hospitals until he began sending cards with private memories written inside. Then she had them refused at the gate. Sienna tried disappearing. It did not work. Her social media accounts went private, then vanished. Her brand partnerships dropped her. A cosmetics company issued a statement about values alignment. Lifestyle magazines deleted profiles that had called her the next great tastemaker of old money elegance. 2 weeks after the wedding, Sienna emailed Emily. Subject: "I know I don't deserve a reply." Emily read it in Charles's office with him beside her. "Emily, I am sorry, not the kind of sorry people say when they get caught. I mean, I am sorry in a way I don't know how to carry. I hated you for things that were never your fault. I thought you made yourself small to make the rest of us feel ordinary, but now I understand I was angry because even when you had everything, you didn't need everyone to know. I did. I needed people to look. Adrian told me you were cold, that you looked down on him, that you were secretly controlling everything. I believed him because it made what I wanted feel justified. But I also chose to believe him because I wanted what he promised. I won't ask you to forgive me. I only want you to know I returned the pearl comb to your lawyer. I should never have touched it." Sienna. Emily read it twice. Charles waited. "Well," he asked, "I think she means it. Perhaps. That doesn't change anything." "No." Emily closed the email. "Do I reply?" Charles considered. "Not today." So she didn't. The divorce moved faster than expected because Adrian had very little ground to stand on. The prenup, which he had once mocked as romantic paperwork for paranoid rich people, now became Emily's shield. He had signed it eagerly before he knew what he was marrying into, believing Emily's visible assets were modest and his future fortune would be his own. He had not realized the prenup protected things far larger than he could imagine. His attorneys argued emotional deception. They said Emily had hidden her identity and therefore the agreement was unfair. Charles responded by producing records showing Adrian had been advised to seek independent counsel, had done so, and had signed with full acknowledgement that Emily might hold family assets outside the marriage. Then came the forged signatures, the hidden accounts, the messages. Sienna, cornered by her own exposure, cooperated. Adrian had used her too. Not innocently, she had been cruel, vain, and willing, but he had fed her lies the way he fed everyone lies, each tailored to the hunger he sensed. In one message, he had written, "Once Emily is isolated, she'll accept the settlement. She hates conflict. The house will be ours in practice, even if the paperwork takes time." In another, "Sienna, stop worrying. People like Emily don't fight dirty, they fold." Emily kept a printed copy of that message in her desk. Not because it hurt, because it reminded her not to fold. Veilasta Global changed under her quickly. She cut 3 vanity projects Adrian had championed and redirected funds into employee childcare, medical research, and debt relief for small suppliers crushed by payment delays. She reopened an ethics office her father had allowed to become ceremonial. She hired outside auditors with no social ties to the board. She promoted Dana to permanent CFO. Some investors complained that she was moving too fast. Emily answered on the quarterly call, "Corruption always thinks accountability is haste." The clip went viral. People began calling her the Steel Heiress. Emily hated the nickname. Her father loved it. "You should have it engraved on a mug," he said one evening at Rosehaven. "I will resign before drinking from a mug that says Steel Heiress." "You wound me, I already ordered 6. They were sitting in the restored garden where new grass had begun to cover the helicopter scar. The roses had been pruned hard after the damage, and fresh buds were appearing. Emily wore jeans and one of her mother's old sweaters. Thomas wore a blanket over his knees, though the evening was warm. For the first time in months, she felt almost peaceful. Then Charles arrived with a folder. Thomas groaned, "Lawyers ruin sunsets." Charles ignored him. "We have an offer from Adrian's counsel." Emily took the folder. "Already. He wants to settle." She opened it. The terms were laughable. Adrian requested a transitional support payment, retention of certain assets, a mutual non-disparagement agreement, and a private statement from Emily clarifying that he had not knowingly attempted bigamy because he believed their separation was emotionally complete. Emily looked up, emotionally complete. Charles's expression was dry, a poetic legal theory. Thomas snorted. Emily read the last page and froze. "What?" Thomas asked. She handed him the folder. Adrian was offering to return certain confidential documents in exchange for financial leniency. Thomas's face darkened. He stole company documents. Charles nodded. "We suspected. This confirms." Emily stood. Her peaceful evening ended like a snapped string. "What documents?" she asked. "He does not specify." "Then he has nothing." "Maybe," Charles said, "or he has something he believes is enough to bargain with." Emily walked to the edge of the garden. The sky above Rosehaven was lavender, streaked with gold. She thought of Adrian wandering through her life, pocketing pieces of it, passwords, names, sentiments, dresses, documents, trust. "What does he want?" she asked. 20 million. Thomas slammed his cane against the ground. "Absolutely not." Emily turned back. "No." Charles nodded. "I assumed." "No negotiation, no payment. We report the extortion attempt." "That may make him desperate." Emily's face hardened. "He already is." Adrian's desperation arrived 3 nights later. At 2:17 in the morning, the alarm at Rosehaven triggered. Emily woke instantly. For a moment she was back in the wedding afternoon, hearing music where there should have been quiet. Then red security lights flashed along the baseboards and her phone lit with alerts. Perimeter breach, East Service Gate. She pulled on a robe and stepped into the hall as 2 security officers moved past. Her father emerged from the West Wing, furious and half asleep. "What is it?" "Stay inside," Emily said. "Don't be absurd." "Dad." He stopped. The old command in her voice surprised them both. On the security monitor in the library, they watched a grainy figure move near the garden wall. not climbing in, climbing out. Then floodlights burst on. Adrian Cross froze with one leg over the wall. For one surreal moment, he looked less like a villain than a ridiculous boy caught stealing apples. Security surrounded him within seconds. Emily watched from the library as they escorted him toward the house. His clothes were muddy, his hair was wet, one sleeve was torn, he had a backpack slung over one shoulder. Charles arrived 15 minutes later, somehow fully dressed. "You live nearby," Thomas grumbled. "I live prepared," Charles replied. Adrian was brought into the front hall, wrists restrained but posture defiant. He looked thinner than he had at the wedding. The expensive glow had dulled. Stubble shadowed his jaw, yet even then he tried to arrange his face into dignity. Emily descended the staircase. His eyes lifted. For a second, something like shame crossed his face. Then it vanished. "You changed the codes," he said. Emily stopped on the last step. "Yes, Adrian, after you attempted to marry someone else here, we changed the codes. I came for my things. At 2 in the morning, over a walls." "My things," he repeated. Charles took the backpack from security and opened it on the hall table. Inside were not clothes. There were several USB drives, a small hard drive, 2 folders of copied financial records, Emily's old diary from the year her mother died, and the velvet box containing Sienna's bracelet. Emily stared at the diary. It was blue cloth, faded at the corners, with a small silver moon on the cover. She had written in it at 17. She had not known Adrian when she wrote those pages. Her voice came out quiet. "Where did you get that?" Adrian's gaze flicked away. "You left it in storage." "In my locked childhood desk." He said nothing. Thomas moved forward, but Emily lifted a hand. "Why?" she asked. Adrian laughed bitterly. "Why? Because I needed to know what I was dealing with. A grieving teenager." "An empire," he snapped. "You were always an empire pretending to be a person." The words struck the room hard. Emily stepped toward him. "Is that how you justified it? Don't look at me like that. Do you know what it's like to stand beside someone who can change your life with one phone call and pretends she's just supportive? Every success I had to wonder if it was mine or yours." Emily's eyes burned, but her voice stayed steady. "So you punished me for helping you. I didn't ask for secret charity. You accepted every benefit. Because you made me dependent before I knew the truth." Thomas said, "Careful, boy." Adrian ignored him, his eyes locked on Emily. "You wanted a grateful husband, someone you could rescue, someone who would never leave because you held the ladder." Emily absorbed that. It was ugly because there was a sliver of truth hidden inside the lie. Had she wanted to rescue him? Yes. Had she loved being needed? Sometimes. Had she confused sacrifice with intimacy? Perhaps. But she had not forced him to betray her. She had not forced him to steal. She had not forced him to stand under her roses with another woman in her mother's dress. "You're right about one thing," Emily said. Adrian blinked. "I should have been honest sooner, about my family, about the company, about the power around me. I thought hiding it made love cleaner, but secrets don't clean love. They only make shadows." For a second, Adrian looked victorious. Then she continued, "But my mistake does not excuse your choices." His expression closed. Emily picked up the diary. "This was mine before you existed in my life. You had no right." "I had every right to understand my wife." "No, you had the right to ask." The simplicity of that seemed to defeat him more than anger would have. Police arrived soon after. Emily did not watch them take Adrian away. She went upstairs with the diary pressed to her chest and sat on the floor of her childhood room until dawn. She did not read the diary. She remembered enough. The criminal investigation expanded after the break-in. The USB drives contained copied company files, none catastrophic, but all confidential. Adrian had apparently planned to leak selective documents to damage Emily's leadership if she refused to pay him. Unfortunately for him, the files also contained metadata tying him to unauthorized downloads made from an executive terminal during his final weeks at Vailasta. His allies disappeared. Malcolm Greer resigned and issued a statement about spending time with family. No one believed it. Veronica Cross gave one interview defending her son, then stopped speaking publicly after reporters found records showing Adrian had purchased her condominium through a questionable consulting bonus. Sienna avoided prosecution by cooperating fully and surrendering evidence. Emily did not object. Revenge, she discovered, had limits. Sienna had betrayed her, but prison would not restore the dress, the friendship, or the years Emily had spent mistaking envy for affection. Adrian was different. Adrian had built a life out of extraction. The divorce finalized on a rainy Thursday 6 months after the wedding. Emily did not attend court in person. She sat in her office with Charles, Dana, and a cup of tea gone cold. "It's done," Charles said after receiving the message. Emily looked up from a supplier report. "That's all. That's all." She waited for relief. It came softly, not like fireworks, but like a door closing in a distant room. "What happens to him now?" "Civil penalties, criminal proceedings, personal bankruptcy is likely. His remaining assets are tied up in claims." Emily nodded. Dana studied her. "Are you okay?" Emily looked down at her bare left hand. For months, she had felt the missing ring like a bruise. Now she felt only skin. "Yes," she said, surprised to mean it. "I think I am." That evening, she returned to Rosehaven alone. The mansion glowed through the rain, warm lights in old windows. For years, she had thought of it as a memory too delicate to inhabit. Now it felt like a place waiting to be used. Lewis from headquarters had sent cuttings from a rose variety his wife loved. Dana had suggested turning the East Wing into a leadership retreat for young women in business. Thomas wanted a library foundation in Emily's mother's name. Charles wanted better locks. Emily wanted all of it. She changed into a simple black dress and went to the cedar room. Her mother's wedding gown hung restored behind glass, cleaned by specialists, the torn hem repaired. The pearl comb rested nearby in a velvet-lined case. Emily stood before it for a long time. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Then, because she could almost hear her mother's voice telling her not to apologize to fabric, she smiled. Downstairs, the doorbell rang. Security called before she reached the hall. "Miss Vale, there's a woman at the gate, Sienna Hart." Emily stopped. The old pain rose, but duller now. "Is she alone?" "Yes." "Let her in, keep her in the front hall." Sienna entered 5 minutes later wearing a plain coat and no makeup. Her hair was shorter. She looked tired in a way that seemed honest. Emily stood near the staircase, not inviting her father. Sienna held a small box. "I know I shouldn't come without asking." "No," Emily said, "you shouldn't." Sienna nodded. "I won't stay." She opened the box. Inside was a silver locket Emily recognized immediately. Her breath caught. "My mother's locket." Sienna's eyes filled. "Adrian gave it to me. He said it was from an antique shop. I believed him because I wanted to. I found the inscription last week." Emily took the locket. On the back, in tiny engraved letters, were the words, "Marin for every storm, T." Her father had given it to her mother on their 10th anniversary. Emily closed her fingers around it. "Why not send it through Charles? I thought I should face you once without hiding behind lawyers." Emily looked at her former friend. There were 100 things she could say, cruel things, true things, questions that would reopen wounds and answers that would not satisfy. Instead, she asked, was any of it real? Sienna's face crumpled. Not theatrically this time, just pain. Yes, she said, but not enough of it. Emily nodded slowly. That was the most honest answer Sienna had ever given her. I loved you, Emily said. Sienna pressed a hand over her mouth. I know, she whispered. No, Emily said. I don't think you did. I think you needed me. I think you admired me sometimes and hated me other times. I think you mistook access for closeness, but I loved you. Sienna cried silently. Emily let her. Then she said, I forgive the girl who sat with me in the hospital chapel. I do not forgive the woman who wore my mother's dress. Not yet, maybe not ever. Sienna nodded. That's more than I deserve. Yes, Emily said. A faint smile touched Sienna's mouth through tears, still honest. Finally. Sienna turned to leave, then paused. Adrian called me yesterday. Emily's body went still. He wanted money. He said if I cared about him, I'd help. I told him no. Good. He said you made him this way. Emily looked at the rain sliding down the windows. No, she said, he was this way. I only stopped decorating it. Sienna left. Emily did not watch her go. 1 year after the ruined wedding, Vailasta Global held its annual foundation gala at Rosehaven. Emily almost cancelled the idea when Dana suggested it. Too theatrical, she said. Dana shrugged. It's also reclamation. Thomas agreed. Your mother would have filled the ballroom with flowers and dared ghosts to complain. So Emily opened the house. Not for social climbers or false friends, but for researchers, teachers, small business owners, scholarship students, nurses, engineers, and employees from every level of the company. The guest list included board members, yes, but also Lewis and his wife, the shelter director who had received the wedding cake, and the hospital florist who still remembered Emily donating arrangements every day. Adrian tried to apologize with roses. The white rose garden bloomed fuller than it had in years. A small plaque stood near the arch. For Marin Vale, who believed love should shelter, not consume. Emily wore emerald silk and her mother's locket. No veil, no ring, no armor beyond posture. During the dinner, she announced the Marin Vale Fellowship, a fund for women rebuilding their careers after financial abuse, betrayal, or displacement. She did not tell her own story in detail. She did not need to. Everyone in the room knew the outline. But she said this. There are many ways to lose a home. Some people are pushed out by disaster, some by poverty, some by people who convince them they are guests in their own lives. This fellowship exists because everyone deserves the means to return not only to a place, but to themselves. The applause rose slowly, then filled the ballroom. Her father cried openly, and Denny did afterward. Later that night, Emily escaped to the garden. The gala music drifted behind her, lights glowed in the trees, the roses moved gently in the warm wind. Charles found her near the balcony steps. You disappeared from your own triumph, he said. I'm allergic to triumph. No, you're suspicious of it. Same rush. He chuckled and handed her an envelope. What is that? Final notice from the bankruptcy court. Adrian Cross has declared personal bankruptcy. Several creditors are pursuing claims. He has also entered a plea in the document theft matter. Emily took the envelope but did not open it. What plea? Guilty to lesser charges. There will be consequences, though less dramatic than some might wish. Do you wish for dramatic consequences, Charles? I am a lawyer. Drama is expensive. Emily smiled faintly. She looked across the lawn to the place where the helicopter had landed a year before. Grass had covered the scar completely. If she had not known where to look, she would never have found it. Is it wrong, she asked, that I don't feel happy he's bankrupt? No. I thought I would. You wanted justice, not joy. Emily slipped the envelope into her clutch, unopened. Do you think he ever loved me? Charles was quiet for a while. Then he said, "I think he loved being chosen by you. Some people mistake that for loving the person who chose them." Emily absorbed that. It fit. Inside, the music changed to something slow and old-fashioned. Through the open doors, Emily saw people dancing beneath chandeliers her mother had chosen. Not a wedding, not a performance, just life moving in a room that had survived. Her father appeared at the doorway and waved his cane. "Emily, stop brooding in the shrubbery. Louis is teaching Dana to salsa and you're missing history." Emily laughed. It startled her. Not because she hadn't laughed in a year, but because this laugh felt unguarded. It rose from somewhere not yet ruined. She walked back toward the house. At the terrace, she paused and looked up at the balcony where she had stood 1 year earlier, suitcase beside her, heartbreaking in public. She remembered the woman she had been then. Silent, shaking, certain the world had ended because one man had betrayed her. Emily wished she could reach through time and touch that woman's hand. She would tell her, "Wait, watch, this is not the end of your life, this is the end of your obedience to other people's lies." A soft wind moved through the roses. For a moment, Emily imagined her mother beside her, smelling of powder and tea, saying, "Every storm, darling, every storm." Emily touched the locket. Then she entered the ballroom. The next morning, Rosehaven was quiet except for birds and the clink of breakfast dishes. Emily sat on the terrace with coffee and a stack of letters from fellowship applicants. Thomas read the newspaper nearby, muttering at headlines. Dana had fallen asleep in the library after insisting she was just resting her eyes. Charles had left before dawn, offended by the concept of leisure. The first letter came from a woman named Elena, whose husband had drained their joint accounts before vanishing. The second came from a former accountant rebuilding after whistleblowing cost her job. The third came from a mother of two who wanted to finish her engineering degree. Emily read each one carefully. Not as charity cases. As people returning to themselves. Near noon, a courier arrived with a small package addressed by hand. No return address. Security scanned it before bringing it to her. Inside was a tarnished brass key and a note. "Emily, this was to the storage unit. I have given the police everything else. There is nothing left. I used to think losing meant having nothing. Now, I think maybe losing is finally seeing what you were trying to steal because you never knew how to earn it. I won't ask you to forgive me. I know you won't answer. Adrian." Emily stared at the key. Thomas lowered his newspaper. "From him." "Yes. What does he want?" "Nothing, apparently." Thomas grunted, suspicious. Emily almost agreed. Then she read the note again. There was no charm in it, no plea, no accusation disguised as apology, just exhaustion. She set it down. For a long time, she felt nothing. Then, unexpectedly, she felt pity. Not the dangerous kind that opened doors, not the old kind that mistook need for love. A distant pity, like seeing a collapsed bridge and understanding it had once carried people somewhere. She put the key in an envelope for Charles. Then she returned to the letters. Years later, people would still tell the story of the wedding at Rosehaven. They would embellish it, of course. Stories like that demanded embroidery. In some versions, Emily arrived in the helicopter herself, wearing diamonds and a black gown. In others, she threw Adrian into the fountain or bought every company that had ever employed him just to fire him again. One ridiculous version claimed she released white doves that had been trained to attack the bride. Emily heard the rumors and let them live. The truth was less cinematic and more powerful. She had come home early. She had seen what was meant to destroy her. She had stood still long enough to understand that humiliation only works when you accept the role assigned to you. Then she refused. Under her leadership, Vailasta Global did not become perfect. No empire was, but it became more honest. The board changed. The audits became permanent. The foundation grew. Rosehaven became a place where people gathered not to display wealth, but to redirect it. Emily never remarried quickly, despite the tabloids trying to attach her to every man who stood within 6 feet. She dated eventually, carefully, with the calm of someone who no longer confused intensity with devotion. She learned to ask direct questions. She learned to answer them too. When people asked why she had hidden her identity from Adrian, she told the truth. I wanted to be loved without the weight of my name. When they asked what she learned, she said, anyone who loves you will want the truth, not the advantage. And when young women at foundation events asked how she survived betrayal so publicly, Emily would look toward the rose garden. I stopped calling the ruins my home, she would say, then I rebuilt. One autumn afternoon, 5 years after the wedding, Emily walked through Rosehaven with a group of fellowship graduates. The garden was gold with late light. The white roses had climbed higher than before, spilling over the arch in fragrant clouds. A little girl, the daughter of one of the fellows, pointed at the lawn. Is this where the helicopter came? Her mother gasped, Maya. Emily laughed, it is. Maya's eyes grew huge. Were you scared? Emily looked at the place where the grass had healed. Yes, she said, very. But you won. Emily considered. Winning was such a small word for what had happened. She had lost a marriage, a friend, illusions, privacy, and the version of herself that believed goodness could protect her from greed. But she had gained truth, work, purpose, and a home that no longer felt haunted. I came back, Emily said. That matters more. Maya seemed to think about this very seriously. Then she nodded, satisfied, and ran toward the fountain. That evening, after the guests left, Emily stood alone beneath the rose arch. The mansion glowed behind her, not Adrian's mansion, not her father's mansion, not even her mother, though her love lived in every room. Emily's. The company was hers too, not because of inheritance alone, but because she had finally chosen responsibility over hiding. Her name was hers, her story was hers, her life, once treated as something others could enter and rearrange, was hers. A car moved slowly up the driveway. Not a Rolls-Royce this time, just Thomas returning from a doctor's appointment, waving irritably because the driver was going too slowly. Emily smiled and waved back. The sun slipped lower. The roses stirred. Emily looked up at the balcony where the old story had ended and the new one had begun. Once she had stood there with a suitcase, watching her husband marry her best friend. Now she stood below it, rooted, unafraid, no longer waiting for anyone to choose her. Behind her, the house lights came on one by one. And this time, when Emily Vale went inside, she was not coming home to a lie. She was coming home to herself.